Leo, sit down. All right. We are on lesson 3-4. Today is a minimum day. We are going fast and furious because this is a normal lesson.
Dang.
Today's date is Friday, October 11th, and I am unpausing it. Thank you. Friday, October 11th. Quiet raised hand. Objective is to what? Chewy was first.
Factor a difference of squares in the form a squared minus b squared.
Thank you, Chewy. If you have your card, please turn that in. Do we have a game warden?
I'll be one.
It's Aurelio today. Aurelio, you know what you're doing? You want me to get this set up for you so you can go nice and fast?
I don't want it.
Who wants to do it? First come, first serve. We'll get this set up next day. I think Atzuri is next in line if you want to do it, Atzuri. No? Yes, no? Jane, you want to do it? Trinity's 50.
Nope.
All right, so what is a square? You, right now, circle what you think is a square. You can always erase it later, cross it out. What do you think is a square? Circle perfect squares here. Perfect squares in terms of polynomials. Take a guess. I will give you this hint. The majority of these are perfect squares. That means over half of these are squares. Take a guess now. Which of these are perfect squares? I'm going to guess at least... There might be two of you that get all of these correct, but I'm guessing the majority of you will forget to circle perfect squares. So, your time is up. Here they are, perfect squares. 49 is a perfect square because I can do 7 squared. X cubed is not a perfect square. I could do x to the power of 1.5 squared, but no decimals. That is not a perfect square. 1 is a perfect square. That should be circled because 1 squared is 1. X to the power of 2 is a perfect square because I could do x squared. It is a perfect square. X to the power of 4 is a perfect square because I could do x to the power of 2 squared. 16y squared is a perfect square because I could do 4y, that quantity, squared. I'm going to pause here. Most people have trouble with these last two, x squared squared and 4y squared. Quantity squared, I should say. This one is the hardest one I can give you that is a square. This is a square because I can do 9w to the power of 3 quantity squared. 9x to the power of 5. While 9 is a perfect square, this is 5. It is an odd number. I don't like that. That is not a perfect square. You now have a bunch of possible examples for perfect squares. I wrote underneath how to go backwards because that is a giant point today. How do you go backwards? If I start with 81w to the power of 6, how do I go backwards to get 9w to the power of 3? Oh yeah, does someone want to be in charge of marbles? India? So whenever someone participates, you can add a marble. You can please add 1 marble for Chewy participating. I have Chewy's card here. Perfect. A square. To summarize what we just did here in words, a square, this row that I circled, has a coefficient that is what? These coefficients out front, what are they? They're right up there on the wall too. What are these things called? It's kind of self-recursive, I don't know what you'd call this thing. That is starts with an S, and it's already written there. You just have to rewrite it, Ellery. It is a square number. I will take your card. Jane is giving you 50 XP. Thank you, Jane, for giving Ellery 50 XP. You need a square coefficient and then a power that is, Loretta?
What's a square number?
A square number is something like 2 squared, which is 4. So possible square numbers are 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. They're up on my wall right here if you forget what square numbers are. I go all the way down to 25 squared, which is 625. All right, and then what is unique about the power, the exponent? The exponent is what? What do you notice about all the exponents that I circled for the variable, Lorea? Even, thank you. If you have an even exponent, even an exponent of 0, 0 is technically an even number. I know we had that debate. 0 is an even number, so if I have 49x to the power of 0, that is still a square number because x to the power of 0 is just 1 and it's just 49. Even negatives are okay, but we're not going to deal with negative powers for today's lesson. All right, so here's the formula. You have to have this guy memorized. The formula, if I have a perfect square minus another perfect square, this is called a difference of squares. Difference because there's a minus sign, squares because there's squares on either side of the minus sign. The formula is a plus b times a minus b. Have it written down, have this memorized. I'm going to point out some interesting things. Notice that in my original formula, I start with an a squared, but in my actual formula that I'm using, I come to an a. To get from a squared to an a, that means I'm going backwards. That means if I had x to the power 4, if this was a squared, a would be x squared. If I had a was equal to 81w to the power 6, regular a that's not a squared is now 9w to the power 3. I need to go backwards. Essentially, I'm taking the square root of a squared to get back to a. This is going to be confusing for a lot of us. I'm sure we'll get lots and lots of practice. I also want to point out that these things are called something. These things are called, does anyone know it? It starts with a C something, P something. Does anyone know the name of these? Colby? It is indeed called a conjugate pair. Write it down. Conjugate pair. This is a conjugate pair, which means it's the same thing. A and B, but the only difference is one has a plus, one has a minus. It's the same numbers, A and B, and maybe the same terms. It could be like 2x and 2x. The only difference is one is a plus and one is a minus. So far, so good. Chewy hood. All right, so here's our procedure. First, you're going to factor out every single time. This is the same step one, over and over. 3 letters. What do they stand for? Who's got it? I see one hand. India. Ooh, careful. It starts with a G. GCF. Thank you, India. Factor out the GCF. That is always your first step. And from there, we used to always be on this first path where we'd go down here. But now we have 2 possible paths. If it's a quadratic trinomial, so I'll give you an example of what that looks like. A quadratic trinomial looks like this. X squared plus 5x plus 6. This is a quadratic trinomial. If you see a quadratic trinomial, if you see something of this form, x squared plus 5x plus 6, then I'm going to use, what's our tool that we use? Quiet raised hand. Only 2 people know this tool. We just did 2 lessons on it. Anna? Then use Ninja Star, specifically Advanced Ninja Star if you're curious. So I'll say Advanced Ninja Star or normal Ninja Star, whichever one makes sense. Advanced Ninja, can't spell, Ninja Star. If you have a coefficient of 1, you can use normal Ninja Star. If you don't know, Advanced Ninja Star will work every single time. All right, and here's the kicker. If I have a difference of squares, so let me give you an example. If I have a difference of squares where it looks like this, let's do 25x squared minus 100. These are both squares. This is a square and this is a square, and I have a minus sign in between. It's a difference of squares. Then I'm going to use this formula. Copy down the formula yet again. I'm using the fact that a squared minus b squared is equal to a plus b times the quantity of a minus b. We now have 2 paths. On Monday, when we come back here, I will be adding our 3rd out of the 4 possible paths that you have to choose from. And Leo actually knows the 4th path that I'm going to hit at the very end of it. It's called factor by grouping. There are 4 different possible paths to choose from. All right, so all of today we're doing path 1, and then it goes to this right path. For the test, you don't know which path to choose, so you have to definitely start with GCF and then choose the path from there. So we're always going to be doing this path today, the right path. What's going on, Colby?
The other questions on Classcraft.
Ah, I see, thank you. All right, so example number 1. You've seen problems like this before. The rectangle below has an area of x squared plus 36 and a width of x plus 6. What is the expression that represents the length of the rectangle? What times x plus 6 will be x squared minus 36? And my hint for everyone is the word conjugate pair. Who's got this? If it was x plus 6, it's basically the same thing with a different sign in between. Who can do this? Come on, guys, you got this. I only see 3 hands. I want to see like 5 hands. Same number, different sign in between. India again. X minus 6 is the final answer. Done. Thank you, Jaden, for getting her 50 XP. It's the same thing, x and 6, but instead of a plus sign, it's a minus sign. It is the conjugate pair of x plus 6. That will give me a difference of squares, x squared and 36. So far, so good. No one's asking me questions. Everyone's bored and we want to move on. All right, let's do some more examples. Factor this as the product of 2 binomials. So I'm using my formula. My formula states a squared minus b squared will give me a plus b times a minus b. I'm going to write the formula underneath so we can figure out what a and b should be. This will help me. I don't need to do this every time. I'm just giving you the structure. Sam, Jaden, are we okay?
Yeah.
All right. So, she didn't get XP. Why would she? Okay. All right. So, if a squared is 49, what is a? I'll repeat the question. I need quiet raised hands for this one. If a squared is 49, what is a? I'm basically taking the square root. Leo, what is it? 7. Write it down. A is 7. So this is 7 and this is 7. If b squared is x squared, we're ignoring the sign. The sign is always going to be the same. If b squared is x squared, what is b? Ellery. X. X. And then copy down the sign. The sign was plus here, minus here, done. It's that easy. All right, example number 3. Now we have to actually do the GCF on this one. We have to be careful. You guys are going to do example 4 by yourselves. It's very, very similar to example number 3. So example number 3, I need to find the GCF. I should be doing step 1 and then step 2. Can someone tell me what the GCF, the greatest common factor, is of 75x squared and 3? What is the greatest common factor? One person knows the greatest common factor. Only one person knows. 2 people know the greatest common factor. Colby.
3.
3. When I have the greatest common factor of 3, Colby, what's left over?
25x squared minus 1.
Thank you, Colby. Jaden's got his participation points, his XP. So, now that we factored out the greatest common factor, we just did step 1 right here. Now we're down here on step 2. We have this form a difference of squares. We have a difference of squares because this is a square, this is a square. I know it's a square, the first one, because I have a square coefficient and an even exponent. So, again, I now need to rewrite this as 3 times 2 things. To figure out what that is, I can help you by writing the form underneath. But I'm going to pause here to make sure that everyone is getting the structure. This is a difference of squares, which means underneath this, I can say this is a squared minus b squared. This is going to be a plus b and a minus b. If a squared is 25x squared, what is a? I will repeat the question. If these 2 things are the same, 25x squared and a squared, how do I get just a? How do I undo the square? How do I square root, Lorena?
5x?
It is indeed 5x. We're at 5x here. A is 5x, 5x and 5x. I copy it down twice because a is in our formula twice, here and here. Thank you, Loretta. And an even easier question. If b squared is 1, what is b? Someone that has their card. Sorry, India. Someone that has a card. Sorry, Loretta. Or sorry, Anna. Sorry, Hillary. Someone that has their card. If b squared is 1, what is b?
Did this thing just like quit?
Weird. Thank you, Leo. If b squared is 1, what is b? What times what is 1? What times itself is 1? Brian? 1. Thank you. So b is 1. 1, 1. And I copy down the sign in between. Plus, minus. Done. We need to leave the 3 in the answer. If the 3 was factored out, leave 3 factored out. There is our final answer. I guess I should have boxed our final answer up here as well. You guys are going to be doing example 4 on your own. You can work with people around you. Good luck. We're back. Step 1, go. Who has it? Jaden has it. I know he had the correct answer. I saw his.
Oh, is that it? Is that done?
Well, no, it's not done. It's the first step. Then you have to do the second step. You want to do the first step for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to get the GCF,
Which is?
2,
Okay.
and then I did some parentheses, and I put x squared in there. Then I got takeaway, or whatever, 36.
Are these both perfect squares? Is x squared a square and is 36 a square?
Yeah.
So do we have a difference of squares? We do indeed have a difference of squares. All right, so now I need to rewrite this thing. This is a squared minus b squared. This should be equal to a plus b times a minus b. It's the same formula over and over and over again. So I'm going to set up my parentheses with the minus sign and the plus sign already in there. I need someone to help me. If a squared is x squared, what is just regular a? If a squared is x squared, what is just a? Brian. It is indeed x. So everywhere where I see an x, or sorry, everywhere where I see an a, write an x. Everywhere that I see a b squared, or sorry, everywhere where I see a b, I need to fill in b, but I need to figure out what b is. B squared is 36. What is just normal b? Quiet raise hand. Quiet raise hand. Who has it? Emily. 6. So write a 6. 6. And I'm not quite done. I'll leave it as a teacher error and an extra credit point. Find what I missed. I did it on purpose, but whatever. There it is. Get the points for it. 1 people, 2 people. Each of these people gets XP and the extra credit point. How many people are getting extra credit today? 1, 2, 3, 4 people are getting extra credit. Any more people are getting extra credit? You don't have to divide between yourselves. You each get 1 point of extra credit if you find it. What is the error up here? 4 people found it. Loria, talk to us. Need the 2 in front. So Colby, Ellery, India, and Loria all get 70 XP and log it in your extra credit trackers. You should have a 2 out front. There is our final answer. So Jaden, did you get that? India, Colby, Loria, Ellery all got 70 XP for a teacher error. There it is. Begin on Khan Academy.